Okay, so today we start um, a new chapter, Perek Mem Hey, chapter 45, and this chapter is about Mashiach and the Parsha. So we've been talking about how we prepare our learning for Mashiach and um, how we saw that the revelation of Torah in our time is not just because the generations are lower, but because we are preparing. We're at the end and we're getting a taste of Mashiach's Torah. So what we're going to see in this chapter, and earlier versions of the Sefer didn't have this section, but here we're going to see how the Rebbe connects everything because the focus is on Mashiach in our generations, how the Rebbe really focused on this in every time the Rebbe spoke about the Parsha. So let's just begin. You'll see what we mean by this. So in general, so our topic here is Bias Mashiach V'Geula Hashlema Gan Parsha Sotara. So how we see Mashiach and Geula actually in the 53 Parshas of the Torah. Okay, so B'Sayach HaSefer Huskra Gishasa Shal Rebbe L'B'Say B'Chol Inim B'Torah Shayachusay L'Geula HaMitzvah V'Shlema. So we've mentioned numerous times already that the Rebbe approach is to find almost in every inyan a connection to Geula. So whether it's the Yontif or the time of the year or the Rambam that we're learning, and in this case the Parsha. And like we mentioned already, that the Rambam hints to this when he talks about in the Sifrei Nevi'im, Kol Hasfarim Meleim B'Davar Zeh, that in Navi it's full of references to Mashiach and Geula. And then the Rebbe explains שגם הפסוקים בכל הספרים שאין מדברים בגלוי בעניין הגאולה, הרי לאמיתתו של דבר תוכנם האמיתי הוא דבר זה, עניין הגאולה. ועל ידי עיון בהעמקה בפרש פסוקים אלו, ומפרשים וכולו, נראה בגלוי שכל הספרים מלאים בדבר זה. So the Rebbe explained that while the Rambam says, yes, the Nevi'im are full of words of Geula, the Rebbe says that even psukim in all the Sfarim, so in all of Tanakh, so even places where it doesn't seem in a very explicit way that they're actually talking about Geula, the truth is that the real taicha, the true content of these psukim are talking about is Geula. And when you really look into psukim properly and you understand the psukim at a deeper level and with Mefarshim, then you start seeing in a more explicit way that all Sfarim are really full of this, not just Nevi'im. We're going to have a partial collection, as they were able to do. So what we're going to see here is a little taste of how the Rebbe finds in the Parshas in Torah, in Chumash itself, not just in Navi, like we say, like the Rambam expresses Navi, but how the Rebbe finds even in the Chumash itself a deeper look into the Parshas, and in there already showing us how it's connected to Geula. So first of all, in general, the Chalukah of Parshas and the Shmaiseim. So what we know is Kol Sefer Torah Shbiyadenu Hu B'Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Shalom. Chalukah Sel Parsha is Ktufas Ukuos Hanekres Midei Shabbos Tchilosa Kanir B'Mei Ezra. Chalukah Shbiyadenu Nun Gimel Parshas. Makara b'minhag b'cholzman. I'm sorry, b'minhag Babel b'zman hashas. So what we know is that the Sefer Torah itself that we have, of course, is from Moshe Rabbeinu. Every Sefer Torah, when a Sefer writes a Torah, you have to have a Torah in front of him. But the division of the Sefer Torah into the Parshas that we read every single Shabbos, so that idea that there is a certain amount and that's read every Shabbos, that was divided by Ezra. And the division that we have into 53 parshas, that the source of that is in a minhag Bavel in the time of the Gemara. And it appears that even in the time of the Shas, there still were not names, the identifying names of the Sedras, the way we know them today. That wasn't there yet. וגם שמייס אלה עברו שינויים מסוימת בדור של אחרי זה, עד שנקבעו השמש הנמוכים בידינו כיום. So it's only, so even though we say the first division, like we said, the first kind of reading it every Shabbos was set up the way we do now in times of Ezra, but 53 Parsha specifically in the Zman of the Shas, and even then they didn't use the names that we know for the Sedra today. That started appearing at the beginning in the times of the Rishonim, and the names have even changed. And we saw an example of this in a previous chapter where we talked about the fact that Zoistia, Tarsa Mitzara, that Mitzara used to be called Zoistia, and only recently we started calling it by the name Mitzara because we find the real the depth of the meaning of Mitzara and how that's affected related to Geula. So we see that we have these different stages of how we read the Torah on Shabbos and the names that we have for the Sedras. V'avshav pasuk nira shepa'amim rabbis niskapsu b'parsha achas. And even though we say when we talk about a parsha, right? Even though at first glance, sometimes you look at a parsha and you say, "Oh, this parsha has many inyanim and concepts that don't seem to be directly connected to one another." And so too, you could say, "Okay, the names of the parsha." And here we're using parshas loosely to mean the sedra, because of course a parsha in the Torah is any little section that ends with a pei or a samach in a chumash. That's really a parsha. And a sedra is what we talk about when, like we discussed, men being mother sedra. So the sedra is that collection sometimes of parshas that are read every single Shabbos. So at first glance, when you look at a sedra, you say, well, it seems to be things that aren't necessarily connected to one another. And you might also say that in terms of the name of the parsha, pa'amim rabbis nira she'en zu elastam teves mitchilos haparsha. Again, at first glance, you say, "Oh, the name of the Sedra, it seems just to be, kind of a random." It's just taking the first word of the Sedra, and that becomes a name. Because that's how we do it. That's our identifying feature. How we identify what Sedra we're reading. To separate between one Sedra and the other. Okay, so that's at first glance. על פי הנחת היסוד שגם חלוקה זו שמות אלו הם מבחינת מנהג ישראל תאריכי, חל זה הכלל של כל העניינים שבתורה הם בתכלס הדיוק. However, if we rely on the foundational understanding that the division of the sedras that we read and their names that come from Minhag Yisrael, and Minhag Yisrael is Torah. Therefore, we have to say that anything in Torah is bediuk. It's actually very precise. And therefore, if this is Minhag Yisrael that becomes Torah, then there is also a certain precision in the division of the sedras the way they are, and in the names that were chosen. Therefore, we understand. As the Rebbe discusses many, many times in the Sichos, shekol ha'niyam shebeparsha achas shayochim ze lezeh u'mahavim yechida achas hanevdeles mehanyanim shebeparsha shelafnei v'shela'acharei. The Rebbe spends quite a bit of time really discussing this, that every inyan in the parsha that's in one sedra really is connected to one another, and it becomes one unit that is different to the inyanim in the sedra in front of it and the sedra after it. The Shem HaParsha, Hamara Al Tachin Kol HaParsha, Mevates Nikus HaParsha, Meshutefes L'Chol Yeneh. And therefore, the name of that parsha really tells us the key content of that parsha, and it expresses the main point that is that uniting factor of all the different concepts or inyanim that might be found in the parsha. Now, of course, this concept is what we see in that brown set of the Kahas Chumash that was published through Chabad of California, where they have the introduction to every single sedra and where they really focus on this, of how the Rebbe connects the name of the sedra to all the inyanim that at first sometimes might seem random within the sedra, and how it's really all connected to the name. And I find that as a wonderful, wonderful resource. So I highly recommend that if you don't have it already. However, like we said before, now, at first glance, it's you don't necessarily see that uniting point of everything in the parsha, and also you don't necessarily see that main point and how that's reflected in the name of the sedra. Move on. Therefore, we understand, and as we see in the Torah of the Rebbe, שבכדי למצוא את הנקודה המאחדת את כל ענייני הפרשה, יש להעמיק מעבר לתוכן הפשוט, ומעבר למשמעות הפשוטה של שם הפרשה. So in order to find that uniting parsha, we have to really delve into a little bit more into the content and also to get beyond the simple meaning of the name as well. So in order to get beyond the pshat, we have to actually learn it and understand it based on chassidus, based on pnimis hatara. Of course, starting with the Medrash, but ubeikar tarsa chassidus. Habiurim b'tar or ulkuti tar l'Rabbeinu Hazaken behem miskalas haparsha chassidus v'drushi Rabbeinu si'enu shel achrizeh v'az achen efshel arais ketzad kol haparsha mahave inyan echad mishtaki b'shem haparsha. So when we don't limit ourselves to the pshat of the name of the parsha and the pshat of the concepts that are within the parsha, and we start learning it based on chassidus, starting off with Midrashim and then Tarsa Chassidus with Torah or the Torah of the Alter Rebbe. And then we see that, as we know, the Torah or the Torah called the Parsha of Chassidus. And then how the Rabbein have explained it afterwards, then we start seeing the deeper meaning and we can start recognizing that uniting factor in everything that's within any Sedra. V'nimsa shebe'etzem chalukas haTorah leparshas ukriyas haparshas b'shemus. So therefore, what we see is that the very division of the Torah to these parshas, in this case, we're really talking about not just parshas, but the sedras, and the reading and calling the sedras by the names that we call them. Bereshis, Noach, Lev, Chaveir, Sara told us as such. Zoe can be parshanus built in Geshes Torah. Parshanus hamatim l'mashmos hapnim shel Torah. So this is really an explanation that's not necessarily felt immediately, but it's an explanation that fits in with Pnimis Torah. And we could therefore say, if it's appropriate to continue and to say, so we can understand now, based on what we've explained last week, that this really fits into what we were talking about of how Torah is revealed more and more in every single subsequent generation. Because when Mashiach comes, then we're going to really have the full revelation of the inner aspects of Torah. And therefore, as we get closer and closer to the times of Mashiach, we have more and more preparation of this, and therefore we have more and more revelation of this Pnimis Torah. And therefore we find that the inyani of Torah that were revealed in during Golus and in Golus, in other words, outside of Eretz Yisrael, they have more of a connection to Pnimis Torah than the inyanim that were revealed to Bnei Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael. B'frat min Hagei Yisrael, she'izkal b'dar shel achra shas, yesh lahem odyos yishach l'Pnimis Torah now b'arichus. And therefore, the minhagim of Bnei Yisrael that were revealed in our generations after the Talmud also again have more of a connection to Pnimis Torah, as we explained in last chapter at length. So we can now apply this also to what we're talking about. Because the division to 53 sedras, right, into 53 kind of sedras of the Torah, is davka connected to the custom of Bavel, Makam HaGalus, and that of course was diaspora, Galus, Masha Enke Bnei Yisrael, Shahayu Michalkim as the Torah Yosef Halakim, Umisaimim Isam, Mesha Gimel Shanim. Because in Eretz Yisrael, in Bavel, they did it by the year. In Eretz Yisrael, they divided up the Torah into smaller portions. Like I said, a Sedra can have numerous parshas in it. So in Eretz Yisrael, they actually initially divided up into smaller parts, and they actually finished reading the Torah only in the course of 3 years, not one. Okay, so the idea that we do it on a yearly is a minhag that started outside of Eretz Yisrael. So like we mentioned, the names of these sedras that we read was revealed in the time after the Gemara. And specifically, even in the later generations. Now move on. So again, this is all hashgacha pratis fitting in with the content. Because the division that we have now, because it originated in Galus, and the names that we use are really fit in with the previous Atara explanation of the Sedras and their content. And that's why, because they're more connected to Hasidus, to previous Atara, that's why they were Dafka connected, they revealed in Gullus, and Dafka in the time after the Talmud, and Dafka B'Bnei Yisrael in a way of minhag. That's how it started. Now, since we said, we've been explaining throughout the Sefer, that really the true inner understanding of everything is the goal of the creation, which is the Gula HaMitzvah Vashlema. And that's what we find many times. The Rebbe in his Sichos shows us how the name of the Sedra really shows and hints to Geula. Like we mentioned just before, in our previous chapter, we saw this again in more detail, how the Parsha Mitzara was first initially called Zaistia, and only in their later generations we start calling it Mitzara, because Mitzara itself hints to Moshiach, who's called Mitzara in the words of Chazal. And there are many more other examples of this. So coming back to our topic, but Einu la'astak l'chapes es inyan ha'geula b'chamisha kum shetara. Yesh l'chol harash l'hisbanim b'shmaisa parshiyos behem nimtza takna pimi shel parsha v'ad l'inyan ha'geula shel parsha. So if we want to see and find the inyan of geula in Chumash, the first thing we need to do is to contemplate the names of the sedras, because the name of the sedra really tells us more about the previous inyan that's in the parsha, and of course the previous of everything is going to be geula. Okay, first one. Now, next bit, Rivki, can you read now?
Sima Parshiyos Binyan Hagula. Oidesh Lahaktim. Minig Yisrael Ishtadel Asayim Kol Inyan B'dibor Oy B'chsav Binyan Toiv Ubfrad Binyan Hagula Mitzvah Shlema Ele Mekavim Matzapim. So it's a Minig Yisrael that we end every talk or anything written with something good, and specifically in the idea of Geula, which we are waiting for. And we see this already in the earlier generations. We see this in the Nevi'im that finished their words with some kind of praise and comfort. Well, דרך זה בדברי חז"ל במשנה וגמרא שכמה מסכתס מסיימס בימים של אגדה ונחמה אמנם בדברי הנביאים ובדברי חז"ל אין זה כלל בכל הספרים שיסיימו בדבר טוב דווקא וחלק גדול מהמסכתס מסיימס בעניינים סתמיים לכאורה. And so we see in Chazal, in Mishnah and Gemara, that a few of the Masechtas finish with an agoda and comforting, but in Nevi'im and in Chazal, not all of the Svarim finish with something with a good idea. Large part of the Masechtas finish with something, whatever it is. ועד שבדברי נביאים ובכסובים יש סברים ישעיהו מלאכי קהלס ואיכה שלכאורה מסיימים בהפך הטוב שלכן נהגו ישראל בדרך שלאחר מכך לחזור ולכפול את הפסוק הקודם לפסוק האחרון בכדי לסיים בדבר טוב באופן גלוי. And there are books in part of the Tanakh, Yeshayahu Malachi Kailas and Eicha, that it seems that they finish with a negative idea. And that's why there's a minhag in later generations to repeat the previous pasuk after the last pasuk, so that we should finish with something good. וגם הספרים שמסיימים בטוב, אין זה דווקא הטוב השלם והנחמה השלמה של הגאולה והמצווה השלמה. And even those sfarim that finish with something positive, but it's not specifically the complete positive, which will only be with the gula mitzvah shlema. Ach b'deres achronim espashet minhag zeh l'sayim b'toiv, u'frat b'toiv hagula yosev yoser. In the more recent generations, this minhag is more widespread to finish with something good, and specifically with the good of the gula. U'frat b'dor achrein al yedei nesiderin shrabim rabim me'mara v'sichaisav shebechsav oid yoser shebal peh mesayim b'inyan hagula mitzvah shlema. And we see this for sure in our generation by the Rebbe, that when that the end of his Maimarim, Sichos, and written, and even more so Baal Peh, that he always finished with the Inyan of a Geula. ויש למר הטעם למנהג זה, כיוון שאכן הסוף התכל'ס של כל הבריאה, וכל הפרטים שבו הוא הטוב האמיתי והשלם של הגאולה מצווה שלמה. And we can say that the reason for this minhag is because the end and the purpose of the whole creation and all the details in it are really are the true good, which is the gula mitzvah shleima. V'lachem b'chol inyan shebay oiskim kasher megiim l'siyum v'tachlusa yesh b'zeh me'im v'dugmas haseif hakloli shel kol inyanim haseif hatoiv shel agula shleima. And therefore, no matter what we're doing, what we're learning, so when we come to the end of it, so that is similar to the end of all, which the end of everything, the purpose of the goal is the gula mitzvah shlema. וזה גופה יכול להיות גם הטעם לכך שמנהג זה כשאר מנהגי ישראל, פשט יסר בדרך אחריהם, כאשר מזכרים לגולה מיtzvah שלמה, והיא נרגשת יסר ויסר, ולכן גם נרגשת יסר המשמעות האמיתי של כל עניינם שאינם אלא הכנה לקראת הגאולה השלמה. And this can also be the reason why this minhag, like other minhagim, became more widespread in the more recent generations, when we are coming closer to the Gula Mitzvah Shlema, and we also feel it more. So we also feel the true meaning of everything, which is all it is really is a hachana for the Gula Shlema. אך כפי שהוזכר לעיל, הרבי מסייחס לכל מנהגי ישראל, לא כעניינם שנחדשו בדור מן הדורס וקודם לכן לא היו, אלא כעניינם שהיו מעוז ומתעמד בהלם, עד שהגיע הזמנם לצאת מהלם אל הגילוי. But as we mentioned earlier, the Rebbe relates to all minhagim, not as inyanim that became new. Something new in this generation, and before that it never was. But these inyanim were there, but they were in a hidden way, and now came the time to reveal them from hidden to revealed. Well, there's a binyanenu after the rest bim koimis rabim b'toros shel Rebbe sheyesh nekav ikvi limtzoi ולהראות שגם הספרים שבגולוי אינם מסיימים בעניין הגאולה, הנה כאשר מעיינים ומעמיקים בתוכן הדברים, רואים כיצד יש בהם עשייה בעניין טוב ועד לעניין הגאולה. And the same way in our Inyan, we can see that from many places in the Rebbe's Torah, that the Rebbe shows how the Sfarim that seem to not finish with an idea of the Gula, but when you look deeper into it, in the Teichen of it, then you will see that then we see that it does finish with the Inyan of Gula. El Shafamim hareze b'derech darash, al yedei hatzah dvarim haksharim hapashat, v'hafshatasa mimashmus hamakoimis. But sometimes it is in a way of drash, and when you move away from the pshat of what's written there. And other times it actually is in a way of pshat, where all of a sudden we understand surprisingly that it does mention the geula. And as it is in connection to all svarim, so it is also to the Chamisha Chumshei Torah. וכנ"ל שמדברי חז"ל, עדס נביאים הראשונים מובן שכבר בתורה שבכתב ישנה עניין של סיים בטוב. And as we mentioned, we understand from Chazal that about the Nevi'im, that in Torah Shebachsav there was already the idea of finishing with good. ועניין זה נמצא בצורה גלויה יותר בחלוקת התורה לג' נון פרשיות. ועל דרך זה בחלוקה הפנימית של כל פרשה לזין קרואים, שבו אפשר למצוא הקפדה ברורה לסיים בדבר טוב. ועל כל פנים שלא לסיים בדבר שהוא הפך הטוב, עד שכמה פעמים עוצרים באמצע עניין ממש בכדי לא לסיים בדבר לא טוב. And this we find in a revealed way even more in the division of the Torah to 53 parshas, and the inner division of each parsha to 7 aliyahs. And we could see here specifically how careful they were to end in something good, but at least not to finish with something which is opposite of good. And therefore, sometimes the division is made in the middle of an inyan, so that it should finish not to finish with something that is not positive. כמובן, הכוונה לסיים בדבר טוב בכלל, ולא לסיים בעניין הגאולה, שנמצא בתורה בגלוי רק במקום מזבודדים. So we understand that the idea to finish with something good is general and not to finish with an idea of the geula, because it's revealed in the Torah, it's revealed only in a few places in the Torah. אך כנ"ל בתורה של הרבי ישנה עסק מיוחד למצוא כסף בסיום הפרשה ממש, ועל כל פנים מסמך לו בכוסף עצמו או בתרגום, ומפרשים נמצא עניין הגאולה ברמז או מפורש ממש. But as we spoke in the Torah of the Rebbe, we do see how the Rebbe makes sure to find at the end of every parsha, or close to the end of every parsha, in the pasuk itself, or in the Targum, or other mefarshim, the Rebbe does find the inyan of Geula, and explicitly the inyan of the Geula. Continue?
Yeah.
Okay. Ina Geula b'Haftarah. Teres lacher shnog Yisrael l'kroi b'Torah parshas kvuos kenal, ha'is exeres hamalchus shaloi l'kroi b'Torah. Generations after, it was already a minhag by Yidden to read Torah, the Parsha every week. There was a gzera that didn't allow them to read in the Torah. V'astiknu l'kroi b'navi b'inyan me'ena Parsha. Hayna shemuskar behem inyan me'a Parsha. Oy sheyesh behem inyan shehu dugmas ha'inyan sheb Parsha yafilu bitoy. Shehu dugmas habitoy sheb Parsha. So then the Chachamim made a takana that we should read in the Nevi'im something with the same idea of the Parsha, that either it has in it an idea of the Parsha, or something similar to the Parsha, or even an expression that is similar to an expression in the Parsha. And here also it seems that sometimes the connection is very superficial. ומובן הטעם הפרשה לכך, שהרי לא בא ההפטרה אלא כמעין זכר בלבד לפרשה, כפי מה שהצליחו למצוא בתוך פרקי הנביאים הקיימים. And we understand the Pashat reason for this is because the Haftarah was only read as a remembrance to the Parsha, whatever they were able to find in the Nevi'im, in the Svarim that already existed. But despite this, in the Rebbe Sichos, we see that the Rebbe does look for and show us the inner connection, direct connection between the Parsha. I'll call cholkeha v'haftarah al kol cholkeha, to the Parsha with all its divisions and the Haftarah and all its divisions. Parsha v'Haftarah mahava hemshech echad mamish. So we see that the Parsha and the Haftarah are actually one no
Continuation.
hemshech, continuation. Thank you. V'fiyah say the nal shekasher al pi minig Yisrael Torah chutz mad inyan me'anavi leParsha b'Torah harei ze moire al shechas pinimis b'neihem. וכיוון שכנ"ל בפרק הקודם, דברי נביאים בכלל נחשבים כהמשך הביר ופירוט של דברי תורה. לכן כאשר פרשה בנביאים הוצמדה לפרשה בתורה, הרי זה מוירה שבפרשה זו שבנביא היא ההמשך והביר והפירוט של האומר בפרשה זו שבתורה. And according to this yesod, this foundational idea, that when the minhag became to connect an inyan from the Navi to the Parsha and the Torah, so this shows that there's an interconnection between them. And as we explained in the previous parak, that in general the Nevi'im are considered a continuation and an explanation and more detailed. It explains the Torah itself. So therefore, the Parsha from the Nevi'im that was connected to the Parsha and Torah, so for sure it is a continuation and explanation and gives in more details the idea of the Parsha and Torah. Zeis v'oid, kasher le'el dafka b'zman hagolus mizgala minyanim pnimim yoser b'Torah, val derech zeh b'inyanenu shezeh shaftoira niskena b'zman hagolus mipnei gzeres hamalchus, ze gufa hayra shabaftoira yeshna inyan nala yoser mesher b'parsha atzma. And even more, as we said earlier, that in the time of Golos, more inner ideas become revealed in the Torah, and since the Haftarah was established in the time of Galus because of the Gzera of the nations, so this shows us that the Haftarah has even a higher idea than the Parsha itself. וכנ"ל בנוגע למעלתם של דברי הנביאים על יסוד הפסוק, כל הסודות של עבודת הנביאים. שמה שבתורה נמצא בסוד והלם בדברי הנביאים נמצא בגולה. And as we said earlier, the Maila of the Nevi'im, we learn from the pasuk Gila Soidei Avodav HaNevi'im that what in the Torah is in secret is hidden, but in the Nevi'im we find it revealed. Well, there's a move on Benegei Liachas Shebin Parsha Shebetorah L'Haftarah Shebenevi'im. Shema Shebeparsha Nimtza Behelam Uvesoid B'Haftarah Nimtza B'Afangoli. So now we understand that this is the same way, the connection between the Parsha and the Haftarah, which is in the Nevi'im, that what we find in the Parsha only in a hidden way, in the Haftarah it is in a revealed way. So therefore, if we find something in the Parsha that seems to be negative, but in the Haftarah in the Haftarah it's revealed the inner positive part about it. And so obviously it is in relation to the secret, the biggest secret and the goal, the inner goal of everything, the Gula Shlema, that if in the Parsha it's in a hidden way, and the Haftarah it's in a revealed way. Re'eluhem divrei haRambam shebe divrei hanavim mehem nilkachu haftarahs ein hadavar tzarach raya shekol asvarim meleim bedivrei zeh shel bias Moshiach. And the Rambam said this clearly when he says in the Nevi'im, which is from where the Haftarahs are taken, there we don't need any proof from Moshiach because the Sarim are full with ideas of Moshiach. And we can say then that this also fits with the way it was set up, that the Haftarah is said after the Kriya in Torah, and like a end and a stamp for it. Because as we said earlier, when we come to the end of an inyan, then we could see its inner purpose. And therefore, when we finish the Parsha, we read the Haftarah, and it is there in the end that we can see the inner purpose in a revealed way, meaning the secret is revealed. Can I take a break?
Yeah, have a look at this footnote here, where the Rebbe said, where we see also something else, where it's connected also to the brachas that are said. Somebody gets an aliyah when they're reading the Torah itself. He says one bracha before and one bracha after. Maftir b'navi, the person who gets maftir is then who's going to get the Haftarah. He says one bracha before and 4 brachas when he finishes. Mavayer, the Rebbe explains, the fact that he has so many more brachas that is said when he finishes the Haftarah, which is from Navi, over the Torah, shows the Mila that's there. It shows us the advantage of how it ends, how the whole thing ends. That it's closer to the multiple, numerous brachos that is there. And also too, that when you look at the end of the brachas, so we said there are 4 brachas, and the content of those brachas, the emphasis there is on Gula. Binyan Yerushalayim, Kibbutz Galios, Chazaras Machos, Beis David, and these 3 main things that the Rebbe talks about: the building of Yerushalayim, ingathering of the Galos, and Chazaras Machos, Beis David. So again, there's that additional emphasis. Rivki, you can read now, Rivki Belansky, so please go ahead.
Okay. Teres Rabim Achar Shinagu Yisrael Lekray Baftera Achar Kriyas Torah Nitfusu Mamari Ad Marzakin Al Seder Parshias Shavua Bisfarim Torah Arva Lekuti Torah Shebehem Misba'eres Mishma'usa Hapnimis Shel HaParsha. So many generations after the minog to read Haftarah after Kriyas Torah, the Maimarim of the Alter Rebbe on the weekly Parsha was printed in the Sfarim Torah and the Lekuti Torah, where the Rebbe explains the inner meaning of each parsha. V'nispashit haminag lelamdam kol shavua v'ad shenikra shmam haparsha chasidus. And the minag was spread to learn these every week, and it's called the Chasidish Parsha. V'alderech hanal b'nagei l'Haftarah shemahava hemshach yasher leparsha kach gam b'nagei leparsha hachasidus. And we see the something similar, just like we saw with the Haftarahs, how it's a direct extension of the Parsha, so too with the Chasidish Parsha. Shareb Raya Isa Kehemshech Yasher Shal Parsha Shavua v'Haftarah, that the Rebbe sees it as a direct continuation of the weekly Parsha and the Haftarah, Kechelik Bilti Nifrad Mimena, and an inseparable part of it. Kashem Shemalis Haftarah Bipnimius Haparsha Nun says Baba Galoy, and just like the mile of the Haftarah is that we see the inner message of the Parsha in a revealed way. Kach v'yeser mikach b'negei leParsha Chasidus. So too, and even more so with the Chasidish Parsha. Shepnimius Haparsha Nun says Baba Oifen Oid Yeser Galoy veYasher. That here in the Pnimius Parsha, we see this even more in a more revealed and direct way. As the Rebbe showed us many times in many places. Parsha Chasidis Maschila b'makim baya Parsha v'Haftara mistayemes. How we could see how the Chassidish Parsha starts off where the Parsha and Haftara leave off. Ki b'Parsha Chasidis aiskim lechatchila b'pnimis. Sorry. Hi, Rifki. I guess we got disconnected. How are you, Rifki? What's your inspiration these days? Oh, I can't hear you. You're on speak. You're on.
Yeah,
Sorry,
well,
oh,
I sent my son off to Israel yesterday, so that was a big step.
wow. Where's he
Yeah.
going?
Baruch Hashem. He's in Migdal.
Yeshiva's open?
Yeah, all the yeshivas opened. Migdal, Kiryat Gat, they opened.
Wow.
So so we sent him, so that's a big step. And my married
Wow.
daughter is also there. She was in New York for Yom Tov, Baruch Hashem, but now she's back.
So where is she?
So
Which
waiting for
city?
Moshiach. She's in Beitar.
Mm-hmm. And how are they
Which is-
doing? Are they feeling like are they
It is what
are
it is,
they
but Baruch Hashem. A girl just came here from Israel yesterday, from Ashkelon, and she said they moved back. Her family moved back to Ashkelon.
Here, just one second. Hi, Rishki. So
Yeah,
I
did
see
you-
Sarah online. She wrote her internet dropped out.
Does she want to get back in?
Let me check if she's coming in. Oh yeah, she's here.
Great. Maybe she should stop the recording and start again. We started talking.
I don't know
Hi,
what
Sarah.
happened. My internet dropped and I got dropped out. But I need to be host again.
Here, 1 second.
You want to stop the recording and restart?
I don't know what you were up to.
We were here.
This is where I dropped out.
Okay. Sorry, we said that. Sorry. וכפי שהרב מאיר בכמה וכמה שאפשר לראות כיצד הפרשה חסידס מתחילה במקום בה הפרשה וההפטרה מסתיימת, כי בפרשה חסידס עוסקים מלכתחילה בפנימיס ותכלס של הפרשה. So the Rebbe showed us in many places how we could see how the Chassidish Parsha starts off where the Parsha of Terah left off, because the Chassidish Parsha, like to begin with, is focused on the pnimius, on the purpose of the Parsha. La'asak be'inyan ha'geula שבפרשה, לירס כיצד כל הספרים מלאים בדבר זה, יש להסברן באופן מיוחד בהפטרה בפרשה חסידס בהם פנימיוס הפרשה והגאולה שבפרשה נמצאים בגלוי. So therefore, when our goal is to see the geula in every parsha, how all the neviim are filled with the nevuos of the geula, we want to pay special attention to the Haftarah and the Chassidish Parsha, because that's where we're going to see the geula in a revealed way. Valpi kolanal yavayu lekaman b'ktsara kaman kodes mitaras shel Rebbe b'kesh l'nyanim elu kvi asher hisiga yad hamelaket v'tein l'chacham v'yichkam. So according to this, we're going to look at a few of the points of the Rebbe's Torah, the way he explains the connection to geula, as far as the author here was able to do for us, and then we could keep learning more. Parshas Bereshis mesaperes al prias ha'elim v'chatam shel achrei Chet Eitzadas, Chet Kayin, Dar Enaish, V'shara Saras hadibros me'adam ad Sara hadaris me'adam ad Neach shayimachisen uvayin. V'siyim Parsha b'leidas Neach alav nemar zeh yinachamenu mimaasenu me'etz ben yedenu min adam asher arara Hashem. Shayadei nirpa klala sheniskal kalala adama b'chet Eitzadas. Ad asiyim mamish b'davar tayv shenech matzachim b'nei avaya. So we're going to start from the beginning. Parshas Bereshis tells us about the creation of the world and all the sins that came after. Chet Eitzadas, the Chet of Kayin, the generation of Enaish, and the rest of the 10 generations from Adam to Noach, which all angered Hashem, until we've come to the end of the Parsha with the birth of Noach, who is the one who will comfort us from from the sin, from the sadness, which was cursed by Hashem. And through this, we'll be healed from the curse of the land that came about through Chet Eitzadas, until we come to the end of the Parsha. It ends off really well, that Noach found favor in the eyes of Hashem. By Rebbe Mevarsha, the Parshas Bereshis, he Parsha Klalis, HaKalelis Kol Inyanim, V'chein Yeshnam beParsha Zu Asara Deres Tafka, Shemispar Etzu Mispar HaKolel Kol Inyanim, V'shar Shebe'eser Sfiris Al Yanis, Me'an Nishtashlu Kol Hanyanim Sheba'olam. So the Rebbe explains that Parshas Bereshis is a very general Parsha that includes everything. And therefore, we see that there's specifically 10 generations in this Parsha, because the number 10 is a general number that includes everything. And the source of these 10 generations are the 10 spheres of Hashem, which in a chain effect, they come down into material things in the world. V'amar Chazal, b'kama mekamis, sh'ashlema shel Sara tia b'yamaisa Moshiach, Kumavur b'negea le Parha Asiris, Shira Asiris, Rav Hasidi. So our Chachamim teach us in many places that the completion of the 10 will be in the days of Mashiach. As we see, we're going to have the 10th Paraduma and the 10th Shira. And what's Rav Hasidi? Hunger?
Yeah.
I don't know. What does that mean? How is there going to be hunger when Mashiach comes?
I have to look it up.
Shemizeh muvan b'nageh l'dara asiri shebeparshas Bereshis nech shematzachem b'ini avaya shekasher li'maisa Mashiach she'az tia hamitzias chen hamitis. And so from here we see about the 10th generation in Bereshis, where Noach finds favor in the eyes of Hashem, that this is connected to the days of Mashiach, when there will be the true chen in the world. Chen, like in pleasantness to Hashem, charm. V'zeh she'in zeh kvar haya eitzel Noach v'karam oiseh b'tara kvar b'zman hazeh, af she'be'etzem ein zeh shaykh l'salav zehu mipnei she'k'eis tzricha liyes hachana l'giluyim d'la'asid. And the fact that we already call the that we already had this by Noach, that he found favor in the eyes of Hashem. When we call him Noach and the Torah already now, is because we're supposed to be preparing now for all the revelations that will be in the future. So even though it's the real time of Noach is Lasid Lavai, but we already are preparing for it now, and we have a taste of it now. Sarah, feel free to fill in or change anything. Parshas Noach mesaperes al kach hishchis kol basar es darka shelachin amar Hashem kates kol basar ba lifnei lefanai v'hineni mashchisa hineni mevias hamabel v'hamshacha bekrisas bris shaloi haya oid mabel loy oisav oid lekalas adama v'loy oisav oid lehakis es kol chai v'oisav bris shalakeshes v'achar kach boim divrei hanavi b'aftara shemisnabe al nachames Yisrael lasid lave b'aftachas HaKadosh Baruch Hu shulei tzia oid galus. So in Parshas Noach, we are told that Hashem destroyed everything. Sorry, that the people became corrupt. And Hashem decided to put an end to all flesh and destroy them and bring the flood. And then it continues to say that Hashem made a promise, bris, that there will never be another Mabul. There will never be another, Hashem will never again curse the land, and he will never destroy all of life again. And he made a sign of this covenant with the rainbow. And afterwards, we have the words of the Navi and the Haftarah, where we have the Nevuah of the comfort that will be for the Yidden in the future. And the promise of Hashem that there will never be another Galus. Oh, she lost her connection again. So maybe I will pause the recording myself.